and being, I'm still good, and so is my family.
That's good. We talked about that, right? Like making sure that you're absorbing more so. Well, I guess being in control of what you absorb. And I guess my question to you then is, since we're on that topic, why do you think so many people struggle with what they let into their life and controlling that aspect as well?
I think society as a whole, we as a whole, we get so caught up in what's going on outside of us, and we were never really taught to be concerned about just ourselves in the moment. We've always been concerned about, that's what we've been taught from children, to be concerned about your neighbor, especially Christians. You have to make sure the partner is good. You have to make sure your mama, your auntie, your daddy, everybody is good around you, because that makes you ultimately feel good and be a good human. Yes, we as humans, we want things to work out in society, and we think that things should be a certain way, and we're drawn to it. We're drawn to be curious. We're drawn to be, most of us, to want the right thing to happen that we feel should happen. So we get caught up in all the negative, and we get consumed by it, from traditions, family traditions, from societal traditions and norms of what we're supposed to do. And then we forget about ourselves. We forget about what's immediate right here in front of us.
And I think that's difficult for a lot of people. Like if I look at my life and I share the story how I had to cut off cable ultimately just to keep all the bombardment from maybe the negative aspects of the world. But so many of us, we engage in the world in different ways. So for example, I can go outside and be at a job where people are toxic. I can have family members that are unhealthy. I can have relationships that are unhealed, right? These are things that for a large part I'm choosing, but so many of us have to still navigate the world in that way. Unless we're just going to lock ourselves up in our bedroom and not see the daylight ever again, right? There are people that do that. But do you think sometimes that maybe we get addicted to the chaos in one way or another?
I think we definitely do. We show up and we want to know, we want to feel, and we want to belong and be part of the process. So we become addicted to it. Like we just have to hear it. It's like you with the cable. It was like me deciding, hey, I'm not going to watch the news except for this time. If not, you get sucked in. We become addicted to the drama and the trauma, because that's what we're used to. That's what we've been taught. That's what we know. That's inherited, passed down. So we are addicted to it, but we get to choose differently. We get to stop getting caught up in the madness of it all. And this is the key, being able to take care of and change what we can.
Do you think that people understand that they have that type of power to do that?
No, no, we haven't been taught that. We think we're powerless. A lot of people, you think about people that didn't even vote. They didn't even think that they votes had ah, that it counted, that it mattered. So people think they're powerless and they want to argue and debate it, but you cannot debate things when you're not willing to make those steps either towards the change. We all have to be in this, but we first have to focus on us and what we know, and educating ourselves and knowing the part that we play in it so that we can make a difference. We can't shape the world. We can't do anything different unless we're shaping ourselves, meaning taking control of what we absorb, what we believe in, what we have faith in, and then showing up in that and walking in that. Because if you're going in as a what is downtrodden and just consumed with all of that, you're angry. How can you think straight? How can I tell the women that I work with, if you're always fighting, how can you thrive? How can you show up? How can you give your all? Because you're already in battle.
I know. Tip deep breath, deep breath. Just
Yes.
woosah. It reminds me of Bad Boys, right? Martin Lawrence character just woosah it
Woosah.
out, right?
Yes.
Woosah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like there was actually a coworker of mine. This was a few years ago. She had a concern that the way the world was working, her understanding was that there's probably going to be a shift between how women are seen and how men are seen because we absorb and we allow things differently in our life. Like many women would tell you that I'm an empath. I want to fix things. I want to heal this. I want to do that, right? They'll spend all this time and energy and resources on others. And then when you ask them, okay, when's the last time you did something for yourself? They're like, when was my birthday? Right? They're trying to remember when they did something that was a demonstration of loving themselves. Why do you think women in general struggle with that?
Honey, let me tell you, because it's just so crazy. I just sent an email out to my email list the other day, and it was about me. And I do this work every day and I help women through it. But I got so caught up and wrapped up in my job that I was going even when I was sick. And I had to do some work on myself, like, what's going on with you? Why are you still showing up and not loving on yourself, giving you what you need? And what I came up with is I was caught up, me being in a male-dominated industry, me being third in command, me showing up every day, me finally getting my flowers, them finally recognizing who I am, what I do, how I show up. I became addicted to that. I got so caught up, not in the power of it, but in being recognized finally and getting that in itself had me going to work sick, sick to the point where I ended up having to have minor surgery, you know, where I put my health aside because I was so caught up in being that great person. It wasn't so much that I was gatekeeping or didn't share, because the things that I told myself was, I need to be there for my team, I need to show up. So was I still looking for validation? No, but I was still wanting I was so happy with myself that I finally got everything that I was thought I deserved, that I forgot about me. So I think a lot of times that's what happens. We get caught up in different things. Some people get caught up in validation. Some people get caught up in being what everyone else thinks they should be. So it's different things, and it's learning what it is and asking yourself, why am I doing these things? Or knowing to ask yourself these questions. Because no matter how much work you do, no matter how much you show up, it's something that triggers that safe place in your brain that goes, you know what, this is a good place for you.
How do you, if you were to look back on that specific situation, how was your state of mind, your mental health before that? And how was it after that then?
My Let me think about that. But my mental health, I think my mental health was good, but I think but it's better. It was good, but it's better now because I had time to sit with it and had an understanding where I was able to coach myself, work with myself to figure out, like, why did you do this? I was still making decisions, but I wasn't making decisions that were best for me. So it wasn't that I was in a bad state of mind or in need of. I was more so enjoying and embracing everything that I achieved and finally getting everything. But it has improved more so than I'm paying more attention to myself because I preach it, I talk about it. Self-love is is all that you can do some days. And a lot of times we get it mixed up, self-care and self-love. And loving on yourself is more important, but we don't know how. We know how to love everyone around us. We just don't know how to love ourselves.
What are some of the ways then we can figure out not only how to provide that to ourselves, but to make sure that we know the difference between self-care and self-love?
Oh my goodness. I was reading Bell Hook's book. Is it Self-Love? I can't think of her exact name. I'm sorry about that, but we can figure it out. But self-love and self-care is different because self-care is giving those things like those spa days, those days where you make sure you're fed and you're clothed. And those are the things that we've been taught. And that's what sometimes when you're even in a family relationship dynamic, one parent gives the love, one person gives the care. And usually it's your mother that's caring and your father that's, well, in my home, my father told me how great I was. He talked love into my spirit, into my heart. where your mother wanted to make sure everything was taken care of. So that's the difference. Loving you is talking nice to yourself, being kind to you, knowing when to say, I don't feel well, and taking rest, keeping those small promises to yourself, showing up for you, saying no, even if it feels unfamiliar to you and foreign, you still do it to protect your place, putting those boundaries in place. Those, those are, that is self-love in itself. Care is doing all the things to satisfy your needs, not your wants, but your needs.
If I look back on my life, there's a time where I struggled knowing the difference. And the reason why I struggled knowing the difference is because one, no one told me the difference, right? And two, I think with a lot of people, especially those who come from immigrant parents, your parents are working so hard, they may not be able to show you the type of love that you wanted. Going back to that book, right? The Five Love Languages.
Mhm.
So because I didn't hear it, I grew up wanting to hear it. And because I didn't hear it, but the substitute was someone buying me gifts, Christmas, but it had empty value because I knew it didn't mean much. As I grew up, when I would receive gifts, it didn't mean much to me. It was a remind me of my childhood, where it was a substitute for love, but it wasn't out of love. So as I grew up, I realized that my love has to at some point come within, meaning that I have to be the origins of my love. And then when I extend it outwards, then I can have people love me in the way that I want to love me. But if I didn't have that revelation, if I didn't do that work, I don't know if I would have been able to ever achieve it because I think to care for yourself ultimately would lead to self love. But then when you're working with the women, when you're understanding the women who are maybe struggling with this, why do you then think that they spend so much time giving out the type of love they've always wanted to receive, but they don't ever stop to give themselves that same type of love?
That's what we call a return on investment. We think if we give it out, if we show up enough, people are going to do the same thing for us. Your love languages, um, is what you've been taught, is learned behaviors and how you felt it when you received it. I don't think that I think people give you what they know how to give. And some people know how to give care because they believe that is love. They do. People don't give love, and understanding what love is to you is the key. And this is what I teach my clients, how to love on themselves and not outsource it, giving away to receive it back. You showing up and you giving your love away or what you believe is love, meaning that you washing clothes, say you in a relationship with and you the one cooking, cleaning, showing up, that's care. You're caring for a person. And that's how you show love. But is that what that person needs? And that's why it's so important to understand yourself, not just women, but men in general too. What do you need for self-love? Because then you can ask for it, or you know what you want, or what you're willing to accept and what you aren't willing to accept. And those are things that weren't taught because traditionally passed on, like you said, parents worked every day. Both my parents worked every day. They came home, they wanted to make sure that, we had food, clothes, went to the best schools that they could afford to send us to. They did all of those things. So that's what I thought love was, someone caring for me and taking care of those needs when I'm capable and able of doing that for myself. So I needed to know what love was. We don't know what love is because we never been taught, but taking the time to ask yourself, what do I give to other people? Why am I giving these things? Why am I showing up? For me, love is safety. And figuring out what you need and then naming it and defining it for yourself allows you to give it to yourself first. That's what self allyship is. That's what self love is and care. So you have to be able to define it for yourself. And that takes time daily going in, asking yourself the questions when you're giving someone something. Why am I doing this? Especially when you're unhappy doing it. especially when you don't know if you should do it, especially if it's not being reciprocated at all. And I know people say you shouldn't expect anything back, but if you're giving it and expecting something back, then we both know you need to ask yourself why and figure out what you need to stop giving it away in hopes of getting it back.
What are then some of the obstacles that prevents people from defining it and understanding that they can receive it back then?
Oh, the norms, your traditions. This is what you saw. This is what you know. That's the biggest one. We don't know how to separate that. And if we never do the work on ourselves to understand that it doesn't have to be the way it's always been, that we can control what we allow in our lives. That's the first thing. And then it's easy. It's easy to get caught up in what you know. But what if we do the right thing that's hard, that's uncomfortable? People don't want to be uncomfortable. Who want to be uncomfortable? You want to be uncomfortable? You get in the seat and you switching and you're moving and you're doing all the things? No, absolutely not. But having the willingness to get uncomfortable, to figure out what it is and how to, and figuring out what value you bring. A lot of times we don't even think that we have any value. So how are we stepping into it? How are we figuring out we don't think we have anything to offer but to give of ourselves? Give our thoughts, our minds, our bodies, our souls to someone else in hopes of receiving it. But you think about it, if you learn when you learn to value yourself, you think differently, you show up differently, you walk differently. Um, I've been mentoring young girls in school. So they told me, Miss Harris, when you standing 10 toes down in it, I'll be like, yes. When you stand 10 toes down in it, when you showing up knowing that you're rooted in knowing your value and what you bring and understanding that for yourself and not looking for it outside of you.
Do you then believe that, or do you think that value is assigned to everyone at a very young age? And then as we grow, it can either increase or decrease? Or do you think that we have to obtain the type of value that we want?
I think it is at birth. We are given it at birth. But because of the way we're raised, depending on your culture, depending on your heritage, depending on the society that you live in, you aren't allowed to explore it. A lot of times we want children to sit, be still, be quiet. We don't tell them just to be good humans. We tell them to be who we think they should be and how they should show up. We don't allow them, or we stifle them, or we keep them. So it takes time for them to explore and to become. When we allow children to have a voice, to be open, to talk about things. And I'm not saying that to have no type of boundaries for children. I'm not saying not to discipline children, may keep them from harm's way, but allowing them to explore freely and ask questions. They're curious by nature, but we stop it at some point. So there is value from day one, the day you were born. It is inherited in your life that you have it. And it's for us, adults and humans, to develop it as we grow and to help children do it.
If then value is born within us from birth, and I agree with you that we all have the potential for the type of life that we want and the value is instilled. How can we then, as we grow from teenagers to adults to fully functional contributors to society, minimize the events that can decrease our value?
I don't think we can minimize anything, to be very honest. But I think that we can work through anything that happens. Life is 50-50. When you wake up, it's good and it's bad. We want to say that things don't happen. That's why when things do happen in our lives, we have to have that joy place that we go to, that we lean into to get us through those times. But to keep someone from anything happening, that's like having control. And we don't have control over the things that happen. We have control on how we get through it, how we show up in it, how we walk through it. So us doing the work and understanding ourselves and loving on ourselves, believing in ourselves, trusting our own thoughts and opinions is key. As long as we're giving that away to someone else and having them make decisions for us, are we really getting through life, or are we just surviving?
That's a good point. And that reminds me of No, it is because that reminds me of someone that I used to date, and she hated being vulnerable and she hated giving up control because to her she was always in control of her situation. But what was happening around her is that things were falling apart, right? Like her years ago, before I got into the picture, her marriage fell apart, her situation with her children fell apart, her situation with her family, her parents fell apart. And for her, what bothered her the most wasn't the loss of these relationships, it was the feeling of being powerless. She absolutely had to have control in every situation possible. And that's why I asked that question, because when I think about your answer, I think about what she was going through, and she was trying to minimize every potential bad situation. But you
But that's what she
can't.
focused on. When you focus
Mm.
on all of those things, when you focus on what could go wrong, what's not right, how is not, I'm sorry, I cut you off too. When you think about all of those things all the time, what are you drawing to you? What are you expecting to happen? You're not even allowing yourself enough time to yield and allow God to move on your behalf because you're so caught up in what's going to happen, what could happen. You haven't even painted a picture that was beautiful for yourself. So being able to allow what may happen to happen and know without a shadow of a doubt that everything is always working out for you and not happening to you allows you to walk differently, step differently, talk differently. Because you go in already knowing, oh, things happen, life happens, allow you to make a shift. It allows you to make a decision about the things that are perceived that aren't good. It allows you to work through it differently. But if you already going in thinking, "Oh my goodness, this the end of the world. Nothing's going to happen. I should have did this to control this and this would have been okay." You're not leaving yourself any room for anything.
Yeah, it's like the person, they wake up in the morning and they're about to shower. 35% of people that shower slip in the bathtub as they're showering, right? And then they get to their car. 25% of people this month died in a car accident. So in their mind, they've already conditioned themselves for the trauma. So when the trauma happens, they're like, okay, it's just another day in the park.
They already expecting it. They're already expecting all the bad things to happen to them. They're not leaving any room for good. They're not leaving any room for any blessings. They're not leaving any room for good to happen in their lives.
So let me ask you a question then, because this is something that I believe is it's their security, because maybe it's how they're protecting themselves, right? Because they want to prepare for the worst, so they say, okay, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So for example, they would get into, let's say, a relationship, or let's say they get into a situation, they're saying that, okay, um this is probably going to end in a year. So what they do is 9 months in, okay, I'm preparing for this fight, right? They're coming up with the chaos, right? They want to introduce it because they've already convinced themselves at this point in time is going to end. So do you think then people who always focus on the negative, who don't leave any room for the positive, are doing so because they know deep down inside they're going to sabotage the situation one way or another?
I don't think that they know it, they're conscious of it. It's something that's unconscious. They're so comfortable and know, and that's where their comfort lies in them being in chaos that they automatically go there. I have a friend of mine, she's no matter how good things are, no matter the day of the week, that's why I limit how I interact with her. Let me say that to be very honest. And she's a good friend of mine. But no matter how good she can win $1 million, she's going to create a scenario in her mind and in her heart that she absolutely believes because of past traumas, because of childhood norms, childhood situations, and that's where she's comfortable. Her joy is not comforting for her. Her chaos is comforting, and that's where she stays. And us learning and getting to the core and the root of why we believe what we believe will allow us to move and understand where we can recognize when it's happening. Like I recognized when, hey, I was showing up for this job because I was finally getting what I thought I deserved from them. And until we do that work and understanding that, stepping into it, talking about it, you're always going to have that place where you're just surviving. And I think as Black people, that's what we do sometimes. We just survive. And that's not enough. And that's not living when we're always in that place of gloom and doom. We're more than that. And I think that's what's happening even in society today. We're seeing it come to pass. We expected this. So now we're seeing it and we're feeding on it. But we get to change the narrative in our own personal lives and how we see life.
Do you think that is impacting people at a younger and younger age these days?
Oh, yeah, because they have access to the internet. We talk about things so freely and openly with children. They are consumed with whatever we consume with. If we talk about it, they in it, they know more than us, and they done looked it up. They done talked about it amongst their friends, and they know what their parents' opinions are. I think that is good. Let me say this. I believe that because when I grew up, you wasn't in grown folks' business. Go sit down somewhere. You know, am I happy with that we're able to have conversations and make children aware? But I still think that we need to safeguard them from certain things. I don't think that they need to know and see everything. I think their minds are still developing, they're still growing, they're still processing. And no matter how much we tell them and fill them with things, they still don't quite get it or understand it. So we have to be mindful what we're pouring into them as well.
And I wonder how many children growing up, because they're growing up a lot faster than, let's say, you and I were at that age. Now, when they enter the world, when they enter school, when they enter the workforce, they're being hit in so many different ways. And maybe these children aren't equipped at that age to understand what they should take in and what they should just keep at a distance. Do you see them struggling with that part as well because they have access to so much more, but now there's an inclination to struggle when it comes to navigating the world at that younger age?
Of course it is. Because again, telling them, showing them, giving them all of these things, but when they have to really face it themselves and make these decisions, and they have already built up biases because of what they've been taught or the things that they have been directed or navigated to learn and to read, it makes it difficult for them. It makes it so much harder, and they stay to themselves. They resist anything outside of their norm. I think that's what we're doing a disservice for children.
I saw someone come into the office where I used to work. They were probably 19, 20 years old. And their view of the world was so negative. And I would ask them questions on why that is, because usually you get the impression that when someone is negative, something has happened directly to them. But this person is because of everything that they were engaging with online. And it gave them a perspective of how bad the world could be because they saw all the bad possibilities. So then when I asked them, tell me something positive that has either happened to you or that you've come across, and they struggled. And they struggled hard to come up with everything. And I look at that as like the algorithm of your life, like what you enter, what you entertain, you begin to see more and more of it. But if you don't do the work, you can't rewrite that, right? As you work with women and men, do you see them coming into the session with you or the conversations with you with a view of the world that is so dark? You begin to wonder, did this happen to you or did you read about it or see it somewhere else?
It's inherited. Some of it is inherited. It happened and it's passed down generationally that we automatically feel that it has happened. So even though it didn't exactly happen, we feel it, we taste it because we've heard all the stories. We've heard all of the problems.